All right, welcome to the Innovative Pedagogy Podcast, the leadership series. I am your host, Chris Garcia, and today's conversation centers on something that I've been reflecting more and more in my own leadership journey, and that is the role of relationships in creating meaningful change. So in educational technology, it's very easy for us to focus on the visible parts of the work when it comes to thinking of devices, systems, platforms, infrastructure, cybersecurity, now artificial intelligence. And guess what? Those things do matter, but I believe that the deeper work often depends on trust, human relationships, and building relationships with leaders that know how to build with teams, partners, colleagues, and even the broader community. So our guest today is Rob Dickson. He is the Chief Information Officer for Wichita Public Schools. He is a nationally recognized technology leader whose career has included digital transformation, personalized professional learning, virtual school development, and large-scale technology implementation. Rob, thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the offer.
No, of course, and I will say that I'm going to kind of give a brief history of how we met, because this is the power of social media and the power of timing and whatnot. But when I started my position, when I started supporting our county office of education schools in San Diego region with esports, I was trying to dive into a lot of experienced people that were involved with it or whatnot. And there was a LinkedIn webinar that was taking place. And one of the guest speakers on this webinar was Rob. And I noticed that his background, I was like, wait a second, that looks like a school here in San Diego County. That looks like Design 39. That's part of the Poway Unified School District. And here's this expert like from esports representing Wichita, Kansas. And I'm like, how does this make sense? So I immediately got on LinkedIn, added Rob as a friend, messaged him, told him who I was, my role, and building out an esports program, and even the Future Ready Lab that's located at the Linda Vista Innovation Center. And I said, like, hey, like, can we collaborate? And then Rob was like, can we actually take a tour of your working space? So within a matter of 24 hours, we met in person, and it just so happened, just the way it happened. And this was, I believe, September, October of 2023. So Rob, it just shows you the power of LinkedIn and social media and perfect timing.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of things that happen circumstantially. I mean, my exposure to esports goes back to like 2018 when I was in Omaha Public Schools, and my help desk main person, my lead, her son is Dr. Lupo, who is a gamer on Fortnite and actually raises money for St. Jude's research, like on Twitch for 24 hours can raise like $1.5 million for St. Jude's research, just doing Twitch streaming from Fortnite. And so I was like, I was just mind boggled by how that process worked. And so whenever I got to Wichita, Clint, who's our esports specialist here, he came to me and he's like, hey, we have these groups of esports happening. And, I mean, it's 2019. You can imagine what the world looked like just like 6 months later.
Yeah.
I said, you know what? Hey, let's go all in. And it just so happens circumstantially that CARES Act dollars came, and I used CARES Act dollars to buy devices, and I used capital outlay dollars to feed esports. And we provided labs to all of our high schools at that point and started an organized esports experience for students. And it's done nothing but grow since then.
That's awesome. And as challenging as 2020 was, if there was one sport and one entity that grew within ed tech and education, it has to be esports, because that was the one thing that people could still do, continually do so.
And I think at that time, I remember thinking through the processes of like, we've got to build strategy. And it just so happens that some of our friends that are neighbors in a neighboring district who now work for high school esports league, which it's named something else now. they built a course called Gaming Concepts, and now
Yes.
that Gaming Concepts is a course that our high school students take and our middle school students take, and it's one of the highest taken courses in our district.
Yeah,
Uh,
I did not know you had a connection with Gaming Concepts. That I mean, I've
yeah,
worked with them, and I've seen even the transition that they've made, even with the curriculum, and yeah, Gaming Concepts.
here
It has like
here's the first
yes,
written edition of that, and it came in this paper book level. It wasn't even in PDF at that point in time. So yeah.
yes. Wow. Okay. And then you were you're definitely one of the I would say grassroots, godfathers of influence within just the scholastic esports in general. So
Yeah.
this is awesome. It kind of proves our point we were talking before we started recording. Just the world of ed tech, connections, knowing people. It's really small, but that actually kind of it's a nice segue to just kind of talk about just relationships and where you started. But I would love to understand more of your leadership foundation. And when you look back at your career,
Yeah.
you are actually hitting a milestone within your age, even right now. And you just told me you've been in education for 27 years. But as you look back, what experiences actually have shaped the way you lead today?
Chris, I would say my mentors have shaped me. And I was not a great high school kid. In fact, I was in the second half of my graduating class. I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart at the time, who um, was valedictorian. So if that tells you anything, uh, she was in a neighboring high school.
Yeah.
But then my mom had signed me up for the military when I was 16. So I think the military brought me structure, and I needed structure. But from a leadership standpoint, that structure along with mentorship, I can name some names: Jim Kirchner, Mark Evans, Chuck Amos. Those are like those are people who have known me for a lot of my professional career and have
Yeah.
helped shape me along the way and give me perspectives on leadership that um, is really priceless. I can't explain it, but those along with just lived experience, right? And I think, especially in a realm of AI, we talk about the work being done.
Yeah.
I think, one attribute that I think education needs is wisdom. And so when you think about wisdom, it requires a lived experience and a shared experience. And I think having a mentor, if you're struggling from a leadership perspective, mentors are huge.
And you bring up a very powerful word right now when it talks about just gathering the wisdom from leaders like that. Is there a specific even phrase or even foundational study or theorist or even just a characteristic that they've instilled in you? You're like, you know what? I attribute this because of what they used to say, the books they used to tell me, the wisdom they used to give me. Is there like something that you're like, you always think of that certain leader because of something like that?
Yeah, I'd say this goes to a mentor who I absolutely love. He passed away in 2019. Elliot Levinson used to be a professor at MIT. I used to do these tech audits with him back in 2006, 2007 with Cheryl Abshire. That's how I got to know Cheryl. I've known her forever. To tell you how small the world is, right?
Yeah.
But Elliot read every month. He read a book a month, and I had picked up that process probably from him. And I think a constant reading and there's just a desire to reflect on what you've read in the past and apply it to a future setting. Because Elliot's gone, right? He's passed away. He didn't understand or has never experienced what AI is doing currently in our society and the trajectory that we're on. But the things that he taught me from a mentor and the books that he suggested for me have honestly helped me to navigate ambiguity and uncertainty better than I would have otherwise.
No, that's remarkable, and I can attest to seeing that because I follow you on social media, and the big factor is LinkedIn and seeing. I love how you highlight your book and you highlight the section of the book And
Mhm.
it's almost like you're offering people, and I just want to let you know, like for me as a consumer of what you post, you give me an insight. It's not just a quote, but you give me an insight of even just the creativity of the author, the book cover, and a quote
Mhm.
directly from their book, and then you offer insight as far as like how you're digesting that. So
Yeah.
on a side note,
You-
how do you design every single one of those? I've been meaning to ask you that. Like,
So
do you
I
design?
use Readwise
Okay.
now. I have about I want to say about 100 books in Readwise.
Okay.
That allows me to highlight, and then it gives me those back in a frequency. So every day I get 10 highlights that I review from any of those books. What's interesting, and Chris, this is kind of freaked me out this week a little bit. So I've been working with OpenClaw and Hermes, which are, obviously AI orchestration
Yeah.
sets. And I fed my Readwise highlights into there and had to do what's called a book mirror. And this is Gary Chan posted this on X. And I used that skill and that process in AI and had it run a book mirror for me of the books. What was interesting out of that was as I read it, and I let Smoke read it too, she's like, wow, this is you. And so it was a testament of the books that I've read, combined with the memory that it has built of me. It really spoke almost the way that I speak in text. And so it helped me to reflect on really the consumption of that knowledge in those books have really helped shape me as a leader and as a person.
Wow, that is remarkable, and I really appreciate the tip too, because you're
Yeah.
giving me something to continue to build on. And I recently became, well, not recently, it's been about a year and a half now. My daughter just turned 14 months, and this long standing of like, how do I leave a lasting legacy with her? And as you're sharing that, you're just reminding me the importance of being able to even just leave her the books that I've read.
Mm.
So that way, the day that I'm not here and like
Yeah.
in the next 60 plus years or whatever,
Right.
and she's around, like she can say like, I can go back to this book
Right.
that
The
my
little
dad
notes.
read,
Yeah.
and it's almost like I'm hearing him again.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think I think those pieces help shape and think of the values that you're instilling in your children and
Yeah.
their ability to see those values in the things that you're providing them to read. There's a
Uh,
connection there that is probably even bigger than a course or a class that you take in school.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're making me think now of redirecting my dissertation now for the work that I'm doing with my doctoral program. But but I digress, and I do want to talk more about just now, like now that you've shared your leadership journey, but even more on the relational aspect of it, because being able to see you and connect with you, and even build a relationship just via LinkedIn, and then in 24 hours meet in person, and then we've been able to see each other and connect. We connected last year in San Antonio. I got to check
Yeah.
out some of your sessions, and we got to do a little quick walk-in talks to and from the conference, and of course, just interacting on LinkedIn every now and then as well. But I really admire is the way you build and you maintain relationships, and you have this persona where you're very intentional about staying connected with your partners, your colleagues, and friends over time. And so, when you think of your leadership work, how do you connect that with the relationships that you have maintained and that you can currently build and continue to build?
I think something to point out is I think I'm very fortunate to be in the domain of education
Mhm.
because um, we're not competing against one another. So in my daily work, right, we're trying to build a better educational system and a better educational experience. And that shared work across multiple districts, across multiple states, that has the ability to compound. And you don't have that in the business industry very much. And so that dynamic, it building the relationship and the work that you do is amazing. And the ability for everyone to share uh, toward a common good, I think, presents itself as an amazing launch pad to do great things. And I think that's unique to education. There's not very many areas that you see that collaboration and communication happen. And I think that really builds an environment and an ecosystem to really nurture relationships like that.
When you enter relationships and partnerships just with different entities, and we were talking even before the podcast, but just the opportunities for potential partnerships or working with certain vendors or even just workforce industries or universities, because I know you've done your work with them as well. How do you establish trust in the beginning? Because sometimes we live in an era where people put guardrails up and individuals, and rightly so, there's a lot of different tensions happening in the world. But how do you bring those guardrails down and start building an area of trust?
Yeah, I think I actually learned a little bit of this process doing a problem of practice, right? So we, especially when we adopted AI, we went through a cohort with Education First, building a problem of practice. And that helped me to identify that so many times in the past, I've found a solution looking for a problem. And I think if you flip that back around, I have this problem that I'm trying to find a solution with. In that engagement, you have the ability to build a relationship with a vendor or with a solution provider, and that just builds a dialogue back and forth of you both want to have a great outcome for this service. It's no longer at that point, it's not just I'm buying this service, I'm building an experience. And I think by thinking about it in those terms that, you have a problem that you're trying to find a solution for, and it may be more than one problem. I love to identify, University of Arizona has the 6 levels of problem solving. I can send you the link. I think it's amazing. In fact,
Yeah.
I'd love to point esports to it, because in that, the 6 levels of problem solving at the very beginning, right? Like very basic math is like level 1, right? But then you get to 3, 4, 5, and 6, and there begins to be a range of solutions that would solve the problem. And in 6, even a range of solutions might not solve the entire problem. Like that would be like climate change. I say all those things because I think, when you're looking at some of the problems that we have in education, they're complex. They're like level 5 problems. It may not, and so much in ed tech, right? We think there's like this, this is the crystal ball, right? Like this is going to solve it. And many times it's not. But what is required then after that is to work with that company or multiple companies to help you solve that problem. And so when you look at problems, I'll say it like chronic absenteeism is like a level 5 problem, because there's so much variability in demographics, in the work that is within that community, right? And so when you look at those problems that you're trying to solve, it takes a range of problems and it takes a feedback loop to help solve the problem. You can't do that with an RFP or an RFI, right? And it requires a much deeper engagement with that solution provider or that vendor that allows you to build a relationship with. And you also could do things like F3. I'm one of the senior advisors in F3 and EdTech Digest. We do panels at some of these places to help give some feedback. A lot of times it's non-disclosure, so it's like a feature that those types of experiences help shape solutions to complex problems. And I really feel like in education, we're trying to solve the complex problems now, not the easy ones, because those have already been solved.
Yeah. As you're talking about complex problems, I'm going to pivot really quick just off on one of the questions. And because this is ed tech, and I posted it, you've posted about it as well. Really quick, if you don't mind, well, you might not, it's not a really quick answer. What are your initial thoughts when you started hearing a lot more about the restrictions of screen time as of late? Like, because that's a complex problem, and that's not something that just it didn't evolve overnight. This is something that's been really since 2008 or 2007, and the reality is that's when the iPhone came out.
Right.
But when you hear that it's happening more now, what are your initial thoughts analyzing that problem itself?
I think initially, there's always a time barrier, right? Time is our resource. Attention is a resource. I think when you see all of those, digital literacy comes to mind initially, because like we should teach kids how to do that. I think you saw my post probably a couple of weeks ago where I said, we deployed devices to everybody, but we taught them in like a weekend, right? It's like, the amount of time that we've spent on that. And so I really think if we want to look at if technology is the changing of generations, and if you read Jean Twenge's book Generations, she talks about that, right? It's technology that changes generations, and that the cycle of change is at such a rapid rate that we're actually seeing generational change happening faster than it did previously, if you look at those decades of years between generations. And if you take that into account, and that is the main change in society is based on technology, then digital literacy should have a much larger time of influence to both our kids and our workforce if that's the changing dynamic. And it does look like it's so, right? AI, we have AI and we're solving problems with AI now more than ever, just because it's becoming better. I think data literacy and digital literacy needs to be mixed together. And that, when I think of screen time, it's about intentionality, right? It's not about consumption, it's about creation and creating something that we haven't created yet, and knowing what that looks like, I think requires a curiosity and a creativity, but you can't apply those to technology without the digital literacy piece. And so I really think at some point we'll recognize that deficiency, because that deficiency was there during social media, right? And but nobody trained our parents how to be a parent with social media. Nobody trained students how to navigate social media very well. Someone needs to take ownership of that, and I don't know if that's the educational system or otherwise, right? Or another organization. But at some point, someone needs to help us navigate this new world that we have, that we operate in. You can't change that world back, right? We're not going to move technology backwards. But someone needs to and it's not probably one person, it's organizations, right? To teach that new how of how we operate in society.
Interesting and very powerful, because it goes back to like the whole it takes a village aspect of being able to model this. And I was talking to a colleague of mine, and I was telling them, like, I feel like millennials and Generation X are like the last emerging or the last longest standing generation where it's like we know where we were before technology even arrived. We know how everything looked like. We know how life was like.
You have a compare contrast. You have a compare contrast. Like I remember the first district I was in 1997. Wow. Or 1998. I remember hooking up the internet for the first time. So I have a compare contrast of what a school looked like before the internet than when we turned it on. So I have a clear compare contrast. I also have that with AI, but our kids in kindergarten today will never have a compare contrast of what it looked like before AI.
And to that point, that's where I personally feel, and this is just my take, is that it's our generation that has to model that. Like, hey, this is what life was like before. This is how we responded then. This is how we connected with friends then. And this is how we waited in line also. Like this is how we used to wait in line. And I was talking to someone else the other day. So like for me, for example, with my daughter, we're going back and we're going old school literally by watching Mr. Rogers a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like is he actually has a song that he sings of what we should do while we're waiting. And I'm like, he sings it and like he talks
Yeah.
and he's mentioning like, look at the trees, look at the birds, look at the people around you. What are they doing? Like being more observant of your surroundings. And that really hit me because the other day we went to Disneyland, and as we're in line, I can remember the day when we would wait in line and people would be playing I Spy, or they would be playing just different games, and even to the point when cell phones did come out, and like they would play those games where they would put the like somebody would have to act it out and they put the thing on their head.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But now it's like everyone's on their phones, and it's like
Yeah.
we're waiting in line, and I remember even back in the day, like you go to a theme park and you're waiting in line, and part of waiting in line is you catch up with conversations,
Yeah.
you look around you, and it's more like now everyone's just glued down, and I'm like, okay, like, and again, I don't know, maybe I'm on a soapbox, but I'm like, maybe we're the last generation where we're like, hey, everyone, like this is what life used to be like before screens, and
Mhm.
this is what a proper balance looks like.
There is a net effect too, right? Like I remember when I was growing up, a single parent, right? So she worked two jobs, my mom did, and she would say, boy, on the weekend, she'd say, boy, get out of this house and don't come back until the lights come on. And so I didn't have a cell phone, right? Didn't have internet or anything. She didn't know exactly where I was at. Sometimes I'd say, I'm going, our neighborhood, right? I'd stay in our neighborhood and I would come back home. Because we don't let kids do that anymore, what options do they have? They
Yeah.
pick the path of least resistance, which is either the phone or gaming or other things. I'm not saying that gaming is wrong. They don't have other options. And
Yeah.
I think that unstructured play has such a large impact in social dynamics, right? And how they build relationships. And there's a social fitness that needs to be built.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like today, I built a dashboard with AI today, but it required me to use mental muscles that I hadn't done in quite some time. And so it was cognitively hard for me. In the same way, I feel like kids have anxiety when they have to meet someone face to face or call somebody. Like at Creative Minds, which is our K-6 micro school, in one of our projects, we have them cold call a company. And you can't believe the amount of anxiety some of these kids have in just making a phone call. And I think those are net effects of not having unstructured play.
And this is actually a nice segue to the next question, because as we're talking about these initiatives of even kind of taking it back, but let's just assume that this is an initiative that we want to bring to our school district: digital wellness, digital detox, an opportunity to, let's reel it back, but let's rightfully analyze how much we want to reel it back. Let's not just immediately like, all right, starting tomorrow, this is exactly what's going to happen. So in your experience, you've led a lot of major digital transformational experiences across just your district and many others. So when you think about those efforts, how much of that success depends on technical planning, and how much does it also depend on the trust with the people that you're working with?
I think it matters tremendously. I would also say there's a whole area and continuum that in using technology we need to identify. And I think I love Cozen's continuum where it talks about what you're doing on that device, because it's just a new how, right? Like you can do bad things without technology, and with technology those bad things just get exponential. And in the same way, if you do good things without technology, you could do those good things exponentially well. And I think across that continuum, we need to get to the what within the how is happening to help build intentionality with the technology and the devices. Like, I completely get the arguments on screen time. In fact, Wichita Public Schools was one of the districts that testified against Senate Bill 350 in our state, which would have limited the devices based on a number, right? 15 minutes for elementary. I think it was like 30 minutes or an hour for middle school. Can't remember what the high school number was. That number doesn't fix. That number is a reaction, right?
Right.
What you want to get to is something like the Cozen continuum, where it's what I'm doing, right? Am I creating something? And is that creation, if I think of the Sammer model, is it modification or redefinition? And if it's those things, because I couldn't have done them without the technology, that should be elevated, right? And that should be an elevated learning experience. You couldn't have gotten that experience without the technology. Those are the things that we need to measure and highlight, because right now what's being measured is how many YouTube videos are they watching? What are they consuming? Are they on TikTok? Is it social media? Those are those are augmentation. That's the other side. That's that consumption side. And the creation side, I think, is something that we need to focus on.
I think you hit the nail on the head, that creation side and giving students that opportunity, because it's those brain muscles also that you start seeing them operate. And even when it comes to creation, you can't do it alone. That's when they realize, I need friends, I need collaborative partners, I need feedback, I need parameters. So
That's cool. I'll give you an example. On Tuesday this week, we had just finished our listening session. So across 87 schools, right, we did these listening sessions with staff to find out what's on their mind, and all those pieces. So I took 87 different files, and this was not quantitative, this was qualitative. If I would have built this with our data analysts, it would have required someone to go through and read every word across there to categorize into a dashboard, right? What that looks like. I used AI. Today it was finished. I think it took like 6 revisions. And it took me 3 days. That would have taken months to have done before, if it was even possible and accurate, right? That is a redefinition of work, because it's something I couldn't have done in the amount of time, nor was the capacity of my staff even there to be able to do it. So I was able to augment some of it, but redefine, turning qualitative work into something quantitative that wasn't possible before.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you sharing that example. And that is a small sample size of the great work that Rob is always up to and doing and sharing on social media. Just going to do a shameless plug. If you're not following him on social media, you need to. His handles will be on the show notes when we're almost finished with this, or when we're done with the episode. But Rob, the last question I want to leave, and speaking of wisdom and people, what do you have to share? And when it comes to building meaningful collaborations and just authentic relationships in the field of education, in the field of ed tech, what would you encourage anyone that's listening to this right now? Let's just assume that it's an aspiring leader or a teacher that's in their credential program right now. What advice would you give them?
I would say, there's never a time in history that your circle of influence can be bigger. Like, I think the power of social media is that you can bring dynamic perspectives that you've not seen. I think every kid in this world should travel internationally at some point to get different perspectives. Like, it helped me in the military. I was deployed several times, and that changed my worldview. And I think the more perspectives as a leader you get, the better of a well-rounded leader that you are. And I think that requires you to build relationships across boundaries and learn and reflect on what they've done, what failed for them. Like, I love to ask people, what would you have done different? Because I think, for myself, it's learning from those mistakes, right? So that I don't make those mistakes.
No, I love that. I believe that's extremely powerful, and just the aspect of being able to learn and reflect And I'm with you. Traveling the world will open up your eyes, it will open up your mind, and it will open up your appreciation. And even when it comes to whatever it is, so anybody out there that's listening, I that's some wonderful piece of advice and wisdom. And Rob, I really want to thank you for just taking the time out of your busy schedule just to have this conversation. We were quick too about it, because when I messaged you, I was like, hey, can I get you on the podcast? You're like, send me some dates. And then, I mean, again, you're very quick, man. Like, not even a week. I sent you a message a week ago. Let's get them. So yeah, but even if you're in San Diego, or like when we met, it was within 24 hours. So I appreciate that about you. You're very quick and but meaningful and purposeful. So again, thank you for the time you've taken just to to share your wisdom and your stories and your expertise.
Well, sometimes the universe provides, right? So I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. And for those listening, I think the application is clear. So before we ever think about scaling innovation, we have to build these relationships and build them in a way that is sustainable. And the important thing is to recognize is that partnerships, collaboration, it doesn't happen by accident. It requires asking questions. It requires alignment. It requires problem solving and having those goals connect to each other. So if you want to learn more about Rob Dickson and his work in his education technology leadership, please check out the episode notes. And thank you all those for tuning in. If you have any questions or would like to just collaborate, please reach out to me at cbgarcia@sandiego.edu or visit my website at garciaedtech.com. All right. Thank you, everyone. And we will catch you on the next one. Take care.